Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to be able to present to you today. And as you know, my colleagues will be going into a bit more detail later, so I will briefly introduce our company and what we believe we can offer to landowners and operators here in Romania. Photon Energy is a company that we founded about 10 years ago in the Czech Republic, in Prague. As you probably know, the Czech Republic was one of the first countries to largely copy the German renewable energy law, supporting all kinds of renewable sources, including solar. So basically after Italy and Spain, the Czech Republic was the third country to follow the German example. So we had a 3-year solar boom, as they had in Spain before us, and you had here in Romania and some other countries as well. Unfortunately, also with a slightly unhappy ending in the form of retroactive measures, which is something I will get back to later. But what we do as a company is we cover the whole downstream segment of PV power plants, the life cycle of value chain, if you want to look at it technically or economically. So from project development, the design, the procurement, financing, construction. We also own 26 megawatts in our own portfolio. That is in the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Australia, and since the end of March also in Hungary. And very importantly, we also strongly focus on operations and maintenance, including a specialized team that takes care of inverters, mainly central inverters, but also string inverters. And we've also developed and continue adapting our own monitoring software, including our control room, which is something we'll be discussing later. We are active in 15 countries and across 2 continents, so that includes our colleagues in Australia. We are, as I said, originally founded in the Czech Republic, but today we are a Dutch company headquartered in the Netherlands. And what is also important is that we're publicly listed, so our shares are traded on the Warsaw and Prague stock exchanges. So it means we're a very transparent company. So we built over 50 megawatts, of which we own 26. And we provide O&M services in various forms to over 200 megawatts of installed capacity. I think the only thing I'd like to add here is that we are publicly listed, but we are owner managed. So Michael, who takes care of Australia, and myself, we founded the company 10 years ago. And the good thing is we can make decisions very fast. Just a few things about our history. As I said, founded 10 years ago. We started in the Czech Republic, then went to Slovakia, which also had a support scheme. And the Czech and the Slovak markets came to an end very abruptly, 2010 and 11, so we expanded to Italy and Germany, which at the time were still the number 1 and number 2 markets in Europe. So we've also developed projects there, built projects. But when the financial banking crisis in Italy hit and banks stopped financing, we exited the market. And then later also Germany, when there was a significant decline in feed-in tariffs in 2012. We also then looked at new markets, starting with Bulgaria. We looked at the Romanian market from the point of view of developing projects and adding them to our portfolio. The benefit of hindsight, I have to say, thank God we did not proceed. We almost came very close to acquiring some projects. And of course I'm referring to the retroactive changes that happened here. We looked at Turkey, but in parallel, which we also then decided not to go ahead with. But the market that we've been developing our presence in parallel has been Australia, which is the sunniest continent in the world, and which is interesting because it has a relatively quite similar support scheme as you have here in Romania, combining the possibility to sell electricity into the market, conclude bilateral PPAs, at the same time as the green certificates that are traded two different schemes, up to 100 kilowatt peak of installed capacity. You get those certificates up front, so you can, of course, they are mandated buyers, that means large energy users, utilities. So for small installations, you get them up front. You can sell them immediately, and so they, in essence, represent an investment subsidy through a market-based mechanism. And for larger plants, you get those certificates on an ongoing basis. So just like in Romania, 1 megawatt hour, one certificate, and they will be issued until 2030. So the later we connect, the shorter the period. So that system will be phased out. There's also there's no minimum price, as you have in Romania. There's a penalty that is applicable to eligible buyers who don't fill the quota, which represents the maximum price. Just out of interest, that's 93.25 Australian dollars, about 60 euros per megawatt hour. And the market price of those certificates has been, in the last 2 years, hovering very close to that number, somewhere between $75 and $85. So there's something you would probably crave in Romania. There's actually a structural shortage of those certificates at the moment. Now there's a big wave of development, so probably that will change, and the price is expected to decline in the next couple of years. So whenever we speak to investors, we first draw the comparison between the Romanian and the Australian situation. So far in Australia, the market seems to be better balanced, which does not mean that politicians don't come up with crazy ideas from time to time, but for now it is a bankable market. Coming back to what we, as I mentioned, we're actually given the string of retroactive measures that have happened in Europe. We also launched a specialized subsidiary about 3 years ago called Global Investment Protection, where we hired the former head of department that negotiates bilateral investment treaties in the Netherlands, in order to be able to structure international investments for ourselves, but also for clients. So as you know, there's been now 8-9 countries in Europe where the conditions that were promised to sole investors have changed after we all invested quite fundamentally. So this we consider to be one of the main problems of the industry. So this is something we focused on very strongly, and which is also a reason why, given the situation in Europe, we'd actually given up on trying to develop and build plans for ourselves. However, a combination of factors in Hungary has led us to look at that market, and now this is actually the one market in Europe where we are developing and building for ourselves. And as you've probably already picked up, there's quite a lot of activity in the Hungarian market at the moment. So just coming back to what we do, so we provide solutions, which is from the design all the way to installations. We're also involved in the wholesale of equipment, modules and inverters, where we work with the tier 1 manufacturers. We also have experience in storage that relates mainly to Australia, where we have a hybrid system that is powering a radio antenna. This system has been running for the last 3.5 years reliably, and the issue with storage is that it's still a little bit too expensive. So I think we all hope that storage as a technology will keep declining in costs. The decline curve may not be as steep as with the modules, but I think we can see that it's heading in the right direction. So we believe that the future is more off-grid and off-grid and hybrid space than in the grid-connected space, where I believe it's going to be very close to the utilities. And for an independent player like us, particularly as an investor, it's going to be a bit difficult. But of course, there are markets in the world where there's legislation in place that allows investors to invest and build successfully at this point in time. our operations and maintenance and investment protection. So as my colleagues will be spending more time on this, I'll be very brief. So we started building our O&M division from the very beginning. So when we were building and investing our own plants and building for customers in 2009 and 10. And of course, when there's a solar gold rush, the focus is on getting as many plants connected, which of course we also did, but we focused very strongly from the very get-go to also be able to take care of our customers' plants over the lifetime. And I think one of the over the years, one of the key features of our industry is that because there are no moving parts, a lot of particularly new investors to the asset class tend to underestimate the importance of O&M, just because nothing is moving, as it often is believed that you put the modules there and they'll run for the next 20 years. I think we can tell you it's very far from the truth. It's actually a day-to-day job, which starts with good monitoring, but that I leave to my colleagues. So at the moment we take care of about over 200 megawatts. Of course, our core market is the Czech Republic, where we, on the back of our own portfolio, 15 megawatts, another 15 that we built for external clients, we have grown out to 127. So over 100 megawatts are external, and that makes us at this point the largest O&M services provider in the Czech Republic. The market, just for your reference, is over 2.2 gigawatts, so a little bit bigger than the Romanian market, about 50% larger than the Romanian market. This is also take care of plants in Slovakia, Australia, now Hungary, our first own plant. This is a market where we hope that there will be a lot of growth in the next 2 to 3 years, and also following the request of one of our Slovak clients, we have been operating or providing O&M services to 3 power plants in Romania for the last 3 years in the Hotar region. And of course, although we have not been involved in the initial development of the market here, we would very much like to increase our footprint and service offering in the Romanian market. So, as I mentioned before, and I will not bore you with details now, I'll leave that to my colleagues, but I think what I would like to add is that particularly in the early days, we looked at many different options in the market, and also over the years we found that what is available in terms of monitoring software, control software, we cannot find what we're looking for, so we decided a few years ago to develop our own system. Initially not realizing that we're actually embarking on a journey that requires constant reinvestment, constant improvement, so we are now down to our 3rd version, now developing the 4th. But particularly now with the growing role of energy storage, we see that there is the requirements for a good system are changing. So we're going from pure monitoring to actually controlling plants and being able to switch things on and off. So we've put in and continue putting in a lot of effort and money into the development of the software. We have our own control room that runs 7 days a week, and we've also developed our new own PLC that we install in the plants, because the best software will not help you if you don't have the right data acquisition hardware in place at the plant. Yes, I will just I mentioned it already. This is something that is actually very close to my heart, because the Czech Republic was actually the first country in Europe to launch these retroactive measures. Spain followed a week later, and then before it happened to you in Romania, it happened in a few other countries, in Greece, Bulgaria, also Italy, and also these things have a tendency of not remaining isolated incidents. So typically governments do it once, then they see that there's initial outcry, but it's very tempting And of course, I think one of the things we have to realize as investors in this space is that we are actually the perfect target for earning cheap political capital, because looking at the whole population, there's quite few of us, and the government and politicians have a chance to take quite a lot of money from few people. Right? Taking a lot of money from a lot of people is political suicide, but we are exactly the other end of the spectrum. So this is why we are such easy targets, and in the Czech Republic we have to, as an industry, we keep fighting this since the very beginning, and until the end of the feed-in tariff period, we will have to organize ourselves and fight back. Coming back to what we see in the Romanian market and something we can offer, and of course what we see from discussion with our customers and potential customers is that, of course, due to that slightly dysfunctional green certificate system, the plant revenues are lower. So our approach to operations and maintenance is preventive. So we strongly believe that, in particularly on inverters, but also other key elements of the plants, it always in the long term pays to have a preventive approach to try to prevent damages from happening, because typically, when an inverter has a major blowout, it becomes very expensive. Just a little side note, in the Czech Republic, for example, now it's slightly changing, but until very recently it was for us completely impossible to exchange modules. And it also, to a large extent, was very risky with respect to inverters, in order not to lose the feed-in tariff. So basically our mindset that we developed over the last couple of years is, repair, keep alive. So both inverters and other key components. And I think this also led us to set the setup of a subsidiary, Photon Energy Cardio, where we take care of central inverter brands, where we focused mainly on brands where the manufacturers gone out of business. So we started with Satcom, which went bankrupt a few years ago, but we're also probably the only service organization in at least in Central Eastern Europe that has been trained by Siemens, which has not gone bankrupt but stopped manufacturing inverters a few years ago. And so we have a growing number of clients in that space, and we are also looking at other manufacturers that we're adding to our portfolio. The focus is mainly on those where the manufacturer is gone, and the investors typically have the question, if something breaks, where do you get the warranty is gone, but where do you get my spare parts, and where do you get the software updates? So this is where we started, and we've also about 2 years ago launched actually a Europe-wide business for which we created a website called Fix My Inverters, where we actually we focus on string inverters, pretty much all. We can repair, based on our experience of over 4,000 units, we can repair most of the inverters that have ever been installed in Europe. So we have a deal with one of the I think it's TNT. They pick it up, bring it, we check it, make a quote, and if the client agrees, then we repair it and ship it back. And it's been quite successful. We've reached clients from all the way from Spain and France to really across Europe. So this reflects our approach of keeping things alive and repairing them. Coming back to our monitoring, we believe that any good operational maintenance, and here we understand in the Romanian market, the focus of many of the customers and potential customers we're talking to is more corrective rather than preventive due to budgetary constraints. But even that starts with a good monitoring of plants, which is one, of course, good software, but also the control room. And I believe that we're one of the few players that have actually control room every running 365 hours a day during the sun hours. And then, so this is what we believe we want to focus on. We believe we can add value in terms of operations maintenance. Then there is something new that you may have come across. There are some possibilities to generate ancillary revenues, also through some cryptocurrencies. So there's one. I'm not suggesting to mine bitcoins. That's something I find very strange. But there is a cryptocurrency called solar coins, which you may have come across. It just adds a little bit of additional revenues, and it's something we have experience with. So, and they can be turned into bitcoins and then cash. And last but not least, and that's of course a very special topic, if there's interest to discuss what can be done about structuring investment in such a way that it's at least possible to defend investments in the solar space or any assets in Romania, then of course we're also open to do that. It's, the most important thing here is it is only forward-looking, so we cannot. So if you've been a local investor in the past, then you will not be able to improve your position, but it's possible to structure investment in such a way that any future changes to legislation can be better defended against. So, a few pictures, I've probably seen a few power plants in the past. This is our first large power plant that we built in Sydney, which at the time was the largest system in Sydney. So, thank you very much for your attention. And any questions? Sorry?
The power installed there.
This was 283 kilowatts.
And this is the biggest, because I saw that in Australia you had 15 points of the installation, and only 11 or 15.
Well, the market in Australia, we have when we arrived there, there was before that they had 10 years of support schemes for small rooftops. So pretty much 12-15% of all houses have solar. And our focus ever since has been on the commercial space, and this is something that has taken a lot longer to start than what we thought. So there have been quite a few, so relatively few projects in the market as a whole. So we've realized, about 12, 15, where at the time we're talking 2012, this was the largest system in Sydney. Today, the market has moved on. We then at some point started developing projects with a view of building them ourselves. So we now have a pretty much ready to build project, 30 megawatts in New South Wales. And about a year and a half ago, we saw that none of the developers is focusing on the very high voltage. So we started developing utility scale projects, and so we created a pipeline of about 1.4 gigawatts. And at the beginning of this year, we signed a co-development agreement with Canadian Solar, where we're trying to developing 5 of those segments, about 1.14 gigawatts. So from building relatively small stuff, we went to the other end of the spectrum very, very quickly.
Are you interested in developing small installation for the small public consumer in the future in Romania?
Well, I would say it depends on the scalability. Yeah? So I would say for us, it starts getting interesting once we get at least near 100 kilowatts per installation. So small houses, I would say 10, 20 kilowatts. We'd have to look at it.
Small community, not only small houses.
Yeah. If it's good, then if it's scalable and it's repeatable, then yeah.